Hey everyone, Robert here, author of Expansion Mastery, the practical guide to living a fully engaged life. Are you ready to start living your life to the fullest? Are you ready and willing to transform yourself and your life from ordinary to extraordinary? Let's get to it, my friends. Welcome to the Fully Engaged Life. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today's episode is going to center around the expansion aspect of Expansion Mastery. So I would like to address with you the very nature of expansion. Over the years, I've been asked the question, what do I mean by expansion? And it is not really a term that I coined. It is one that is associated with spirituality. So I would like to offer you a fairly in-depth explanation for what this spiritual expansion is about, and even help you understand what it takes to actually experience it, to have it happen for yourself. Keep in mind that, again, this is one of those topics that's very hard to put into words. So I'll do my best and convey it with a feeling that I associate with it in order to help share it with others. So what is meant by spiritual expansion, or the expansion aspect of Expansion Mastery? Let's begin by looking at it this way. Once we engage successfully enough and long enough in our spiritual practices, we transcend the mind and move into a greater sense of consciousness as our primary point of being. Then, from this perspective of conscious awareness, we are connected to the physical senses of our body and this world that we're living in. So we experience this kind of physical realm, this physical world, but instead of from a mental perspective, from a conscious awareness perspective. It's a little bit of the idea of becoming awakened in this body, in this lifetime. And then when we are living with our conscious awareness as our primary point of being, instead of the mind and the thinking and the ego, then everything we experience has the potential to be an experience that acts as a catalyst for our spiritual expansion. You might look at it this way. In spirituality, we often hear about, you're a young soul or you're an old soul. My wife and I are constantly told that we are old souls. Yes, we're very well aware of that. And we have a tendency to look at a young soul or an old soul in terms of linear time that is created by the mind. And in reality, that's not what that's referring to. It may or may not, who's to actually say, right? That it's referring to maybe how many times we've been reincarnated. The fact of the matter is every soul is eternal. So why are some young and some old? It's not really a matter of age. It's a matter of how much expansion has been achieved. So if we look at it this way, a young soul or old soul has little to nothing to do with chronological age and has more to do with the expansion aspect. An old soul is one that has engaged successfully in expansion, where a young soul is still getting started, hasn't quite got it, maybe a little bit, maybe not at all. but they haven't really started to achieve much for expansion. So how do we know if what we are experiencing is allowing us to expand or not? Well, that's what I want to try and help you with today. When we open ourselves to new experiences without preconceived notions, judgments, or biases of any kind, when we can do that, we have the ability to interact with things in a way that keeps us present in that very moment and allows for our expansion. I'll break this down and explain it a little more clearly here using my own personal experiences. So, in order to enter into any experience without a preconceived notion or biases, we have to have attained a sense of mindfulness. Mindfulness is the very foundation of our ability to achieve expansion. And by mindfulness, I'm not talking about anything that you decide to term as mindfulness. I'm talking about the actual specific practices known as mindfulness. I've explained what that is in great detail in previous podcasts, so you can check that out. Once you have attained this degree of mindfulness, where you can have an experience where you are in the moment, actually locked into that present moment, and the mind is free, it's open. There are no preconceived ideas, notions, judgments, or anything. You are there, you're fresh. It's kind of like the beginner's mind called Shoshin, the beginner's mind where everything is new and fresh, and you're able to see things for what they are, as they are, instead of overlaying any of your own biases on top of it. This is the beginning to having an experience that will allow for your expansion. Now, generally, not always, but generally speaking, most of the time, expansion occurs when we are outside of our comfort zone. And we have to understand that our comfort zone is just not in our home or doing things we are comfortable with. Our identity is a comfort zone. In order to expand, we must dissolve our sense of self. We must dissolve our identity and just be open to being, which is the aspect of heaven, earth, and being, B-E-I-N-G, that I discuss in my book. And once again, our ability to achieve these states, these things, is completely reliant upon our ability to attain high degrees of mindfulness. So allow me to explain a little bit from personal experience. So my wife and I just a few days ago returned from a trip to Turkey, where we went to Istanbul and Cappadocia and Bodrum. We had never been to Turkey. We had never experienced much other than a little bit of their food in the past. And what we wanted to do after being locked down for over a year, we wanted to go somewhere very foreign to us. We wanted to go somewhere that was way out of our comfort zone, that we didn't know much of anything about or anything else, and yet we were aware that it was incredibly rich from a historical standpoint. So we decided to take a trip to Turkey. Now, a lot of you may not realize you can travel at this point in time. Depends on where you're at and all of that stuff. But yes, you can. We did. We went into this experience without any preconceived notions, judgments. We didn't allow our mind to analyze and discriminate. We went in to simply experience. And here's the thing. When you can attain that state, when you can let go of the self, when you're open, totally open to experiencing the culture, for instance, These are the things that allow for your expansion, because you end up experiencing things you didn't know existed. You had no idea that there was anything like that in the world. This gives you that sense of expansion. So we didn't understand everything about the culture, but when we got there, we said we want the cultural experience. We didn't try to force our culture that we're used to onto the experience we were having in Turkey. This is a mistake that I see from people who are not ready to engage in expansion yet. Wherever they go in the world, they try to force the same experience they have while they're at home. This is the opposite of what I'm explaining to you here. So we went in totally open-minded. We wanted to immerse ourselves in the culture. So we had a guide with us everywhere we went, all the time, explaining things. We were asking questions, and he was helping us to have these sorts of experiences, like experiencing real Turkish coffee. And not just experiencing the coffee, but the context through which the coffee is experienced, such as an offering in the beginning of a business deal, or when you go to visit someone, it's customary to offer Turkish coffee or tea. We have never had Turkish tea or Turkish coffee, and it allowed us to experience this. Same with their customs. We got to ask questions and be introduced to customs in that area of the world that we were not aware of. We were able to interact with people, some wonderful, wonderful people there. And they were so helpful and so kind. And we got to have some really good conversations and interactions with people that we're likely to never see again in our lives. And yet they played integral roles in our ability to have an experience that would allow for our expansion. The same with the food. Instead of trying to order foods that we were familiar with, we always engaged in Turkish food. We want traditional Turkish food. So everywhere we went, we would ask for it to be prepared traditionally. We wanted those kind of dishes. We wanted that experience, because it was that experience as a whole that allows us to expand. And over the years, many decades actually, of working on this and living from this standpoint, I've gotten to a point where I have attained a sense of sensitivity and awareness for when the expansion is actually taking place in real time. Can you imagine that? It is an incredible thing where you can actually, there is a sense, kind of like a physical sense as well as an awareness sense, that feels as though you're expanding outward, you're getting bigger. It's a very strange thing to try to describe, but it indicates the fact that it happens. We can be aware of, we can have the sensory experience for the expansion itself while we're in this body. And this is where it leads. So if we start by engaging in the practices of mindfulness, we develop ourselves that way, and we are able to be in the present moment. We're able to leave our comfort zone, our ego, our identity, all of those things behind, and just immerse ourselves in the experience of where we're at and what we're doing. It allows us to actually have the expansion take place. And in the beginning, for many years, it's likely that you won't feel anything. You won't be aware of much, but it will be an enjoyable experience. Over time, as you keep practicing, as you keep evolving, as you increase your internal sensitivity, your spiritual sensitivity, then you will actually attain a state where you can feel the expansion happening. Not to incorporate dogma, but as a way to illustrate what I'm talking about in a way that is comprehensible, we can look at it a couple of different ways. This sensation, this awareness is almost as if the energy bodies around my physical body, the aura, the layers of the aura, just start to get stronger and bigger, expanding out in all directions. One could even liken it to possibly like an angel or something like that, where the wings are tucked and they open and spread out. It's that kind of sensation that allows us to have this feeling, and then there's just an awareness for the fact that it's happening. And one interesting point is a lot of times people get stuck with this because of the different cultures or different religions or customs or what have you. And that is still because you are of ego, of your identity. Just because you go to another country, culture, and experience everything that it has doesn't mean that you have to personally adopt it into your life. You must, however, be open, completely open to the experiencing of it for what it is, without any judgment or interference of your own. And then, if you so choose to adopt certain aspects of that culture into your life, fantastic. Go for it. But it doesn't mean you have to. Basically, if you go and experience something new and it offends you or it threatens a belief, then you are not in an open-minded state and you have not reached a point in your practice where you are capable of expansion. So here are some of the important components of an experience that allows for expansion. First, you have to attain a sense of mindfulness. It's your foundation. Everything is built upon that. Once you have attained a sense of mindfulness and the ability to be in the present moment, you also have to overcome a sense of self, no longer clinging to your identity and ego. We have to let go of that ego. All of this is necessary in order to have the open mind and open heart required to actually truly experience, and experience in a way that is going to allow our expansion. Then you have to get outside of your comfort zone. You have to be in a different place with a different culture and everything. You just have to be completely out of your comfort zone. And you have to leave the comfort zone of the identity. So, for instance, when we were on this trip into Turkey, we didn't talk much about ourselves. It made it a little rough on the guides at first because they were trying to figure out what we liked and didn't like, believed, didn't believe. And we purposefully did not give that information because we didn't want them to cater to what they thought we wanted, if you can follow that. We wanted the actual experience. So with each guide, I told them, be free to share the way things are. You know, tell us factually here. Don't tiptoe around anything. You are not going to offend us in any way, shape, or form. We are here to learn, to experience, and to absorb. It was kind of amusing because one guide we had, after we were with him a couple days, he made the comment that, you know, you guys are really brave for making this trip right now, and we really appreciate that. And we didn't feel any sense of bravery attached to what we did. We just wanted to do it. And then he went on to explain that he said most Americans that visit there as tourists are very fearful. He said you can see the fear in their eyes. That's how they know they're American. And he said, you guys have no fear in your eyes at all. No matter what we do, there's simply no fear in your eyes. And that allowed for a greater sense of mutual respect. And it was very nice feedback. But this is the nature of what we did on this trip. We're not there to be catered to. We want to feel, to experience, to understand what the culture is, how different it is. We wanted the differences. And there were many, many differences. And the majority of these differences, if not all of these differences, were fantastic, incredible things. We had no idea that Turkey was so beautiful. We went to the city of Istanbul and then out into the Anatolian desert of Cappadocia, and then the seaport area of Bodrum. And it was incredible when we had the contrast of the big city and the desert with all of the caves and things, and then we had this lush, mountainous seaport area with the Aegean Sea, which we just love. It's beautiful. It truly offered an incredible experience. And there was a point on the trip, possibly a couple, where I actually had to stop and get my bearings a little bit and point out to my wife that I was feeling, that I was aware of the expansion taking place right at that moment, that I was in the process of experiencing expansion at that moment. Can you imagine? It's amazing. Every time that happens, it really takes me by surprise, and it's just an incredibly overwhelming sensation. So part of this ability to expand is based on our ability to accept things as they are, to see them as they are, to hear them as they are, to actually have them all be fresh and new. Even if you're aware of something to do with it, it's still, the experience itself is fresh, it's new, and you don't overlay any of your own past experiences, knowledge, beliefs, or anything else. You don't intrude on the experience that way. You don't intrude on the experience with any aspect of your mind. You are there, you are open, your heart is open, your mind is open, and that is when you can truly experience the beauty of this world, regardless of where you go, because you are experiencing it through a state of conscious being instead of running it through a bunch of mental filters and judgments and various aspects of mind. And it is this that is the very nature of expansion. It is this that allows us the opportunity to expand. So you can see, you don't have to go on vacation to do that or anything else. You just have to be willing to leave your comfort zone. The comfort zone in which you have created as a routine in your life and as an identity. We must attain that level of personal freedom in order to expand. So it is the act, if you will, of experiencing that directly relates to our expansion. And within the experiencing needs to be all of the components that I've described to you here. If you can successfully engage in the practices and attain these aspects and have them present in your experience, then you will have the ability to attain spiritual expansion. And it is that type of experiencing that is referred to when I use the term fully engaged life. It is when you are in that state of being that you are truly fully engaged in your life and the act of experiencing, which is your life. And just one thing that I do enjoy sharing with my students and clients, and I would like to share with all of you, if I'm capable of attaining these levels of mindfulness, so are you. If I'm capable of attaining the ability to be in the present moment, so are you. If I am capable of attaining all of these components necessary to have an open mind, an open heart, and the act of experiencing in a way that allows for my spiritual expansion, so are you. If over decades of living this way, working with these practices, and attaining these states, I have the ability to be aware and feel when the expansion is actually taking place, so can you. There is certainly nothing special about me or my ability to achieve these things. I just really, really wanted it. So I guess that's what it comes down to. How badly do you want it? Are you ready and willing to transform yourself in your life in order to attain it? Are you ready to live fully engaged? Are you ready to experience real spiritual expansion? Those are questions each of us have to answer for ourselves. Please remember to visit me at www.expansionmastery.com. You can get an autographed copy of Expansion Mastery there. That's the only place you can get an autographed copy. There's a lot of other good stuff on the site. Check it out. There's a newly expanded ebook that's there as well. And the instruction in that will help in your expansion. And make sure you do all the social media stuff, share this podcast, and hit the like, subscribe, leave a nice comment, all of that stuff, and help us out that way. It's always appreciated. Remember, the goal of this is to help propel this consciousness shift forward and to help propel the awakening of humanity. Until next time, my friends, I wish you the very best in your practices and your life. Take care.